When I found the listing for the apartment, it felt like a steal. Decent location, spacious enough, and the rent was surprisingly low for the area. The only catch, I had to share it with a guy named Daniel. Daniel seemed normal enough. He was a little quiet, but polite. The kind of roommate who mostly kept to himself, which honestly was perfect for me. I wasn't looking for a best friend, just someone who wouldn't leave dishes in the sink or throw parties on a Tuesday night. There was one thing about him that struck me as odd, though. He had a room in the apartment that was always locked. It wasn't his bedroom, he had another room for that. This one, he simply referred to as storage. The first time I asked about it, he shrugged. Just some personal stuff, he said. I like my privacy. Fair enough, I thought. But something about the way he said it, the way his whole demeanor shifted, made me uneasy. It wasn't just a casual preference. He really didn't want anyone in that room. At first, I didn't think too much of it. People have their quirks. But then I started hearing things. Late at night, when Daniel was supposedly asleep, I'd hear soft thumping coming from inside the locked room, sometimes scratching. It was faint but consistent, the kind of sound that made my skin crawl without me even understanding why. One night, I joked about it. You got a raccoon trapped in there or something? He didn't laugh. He didn't even look up from his dinner. I just don't like people messing with my stuff. Again, fair enough. But I stopped asking questions after that. Something about the way he shut me down told me I wasn't going to like the answers. A few weeks in, Daniel told me he was going out of town for the weekend. Work thing, he said, tossing a duffel bag over his shoulder. You'll have the place to yourself. I nodded, barely paying attention. But then, as he stood in the doorway, he added, just don't go in my room, all right? That caught my attention. The way he said it, too casual, too forced. It wasn't a reminder. It was a warning. I nodded again, this time slower. Yeah, man, no worries. When the door shut behind him, I felt an odd mix of relief and curiosity. The apartment felt different without him there. Lighter in a way, but that door, the locked room, it felt heavier than ever. I tried to ignore it. Really, I did. But the thought gnawed at me, and by the second night, I couldn't take it anymore. I searched for a key, half expecting not to find one. But there it was, tucked under the couch cushion like it had been waiting for me. I stood outside the door for a long time before finally unlocking it. The room was wrong. There was no furniture, just a bare mattress on the floor. But what really got me were the walls. They were covered in printed-out photos of a woman I didn't recognize. Hundreds of them. Some were candid shots, like she'd been photographed without knowing. Others were blurry, taken from a distance. The worst ones were zoomed in so closely, you could see every detail of her face, her expression frozen in time. Scrawled next to each photo were notes. Disturbing, obsessive notes. Saw her today at the gym. She didn't notice me again. She wore the blue dress I like. My stomach twisted. My hands felt clammy. This wasn't some weird art project. This was stalking. And Daniel wasn't just watching her. He was documenting her every move. I was backing away, heart pounding, when my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Don't go in my room. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow. Then I heard it. The front door unlocking. Panic hit me like a truck. I didn't think, I just moved. The window in the storage room was small, but I managed to squeeze through, landing awkwardly on the fire escape just as I heard footsteps in the apartment. I didn't stop. I climbed down, ran down the street, didn't even look back until I was halfway across the city. I never went back. The next day, I called the cops. I told them everything. They went to check the apartment, but the room was empty. No photos, no mattress, nothing. Daniel was gone too, just vanished, like he never existed. To this day, I have no idea what happened to him, or the woman in the photos. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that soft thumping, and I wonder if she ever heard it too. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe in my own home again. It's been months since it happened, but I still wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, expecting to see her standing over me again. It all started when Rachel, my roommate, moved out without any explanation. We weren't best friends or anything, but we got along fine. She was clean, paid rent on time, and generally kept to herself. Then one day, she just left. No warning, no note, just gone. Her room was emptied out. Her key was left on the counter, and she wasn't answering any of my texts. I figured she must have had some emergency or just decided to ghost me instead of dealing with an awkward conversation. It was weird, but not that weird. People can be flaky, right? The problem was, I couldn't afford the place alone, and I needed a new roommate fast. My landlord must have sensed my desperation because he found someone almost immediately. A girl named Megan. She moved in within a few days of Rachel's disappearance, which should have struck me as odd. But at the time, I was just relieved. Megan was perfect. Too perfect. She was friendly without being intrusive, paid her share of the rent plus extra to move in quickly, and kept everything spotless. At first, I thought I hit the roommate jackpot. But then little things started nagging at me. She never brought friends over. Not once. She didn't seem to have a job, yet always had money. And whenever I tried to ask anything personal, where she was from, what she did before moving here, she gave vague answers or changed the subject. Still, I didn't want to be paranoid. People are private, and I wasn't exactly forthcoming with my own life either. I told myself I was overthinking it. Then, one night, I came home late from work. Megan was already in her room, door closed, lights off. As I walked past the kitchen, I noticed her wallet sitting on the counter. It was open just enough for me to see the ID inside. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I was looking for a clue about her, something to settle the nagging feeling in my gut. But what I saw made my stomach drop. It was Rachel's ID. The name, the details, it was all Rachel's. But the photo, it wasn't Rachel. It was Megan. I felt sick. My hands started shaking as I picked it up, flipping through the rest of the wallet. Credit cards, membership cards, all in Rachel's name. I barely made it to my room before panic set in. My mind was racing. Was this some kind of identity theft? Did Rachel willingly give up her wallet? Or did something happen to her? My gut told me it was the latter. I spent the next hour scouring Rachel's old social media accounts. She hadn't posted in weeks, not even a random meme or a reaction to someone else's post. I sent her a message, but it stayed unread. Her last post was a picture of our apartment, captioned, "Home Sweet Home." That was it. Nothing after that. The next morning, I casually asked Megan if she had ever met Rachel. Her reaction was off. She hesitated for just a second before smiling like usual. Nope, why? My heart pounded, but I forced a laugh. Just curious. It's weird how she left so suddenly. Megan's smile didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, weird. That night, I double-checked the locks before bed. I was exhausted but too wired to sleep. Every sound in the apartment made me jump. Around 3 a.m., I finally started dozing off. Then I woke up. Not to a noise, not to a nightmare, just that strange primal feeling of being watched. I opened my eyes, and there she was, Megan, standing over me. She wasn't doing anything, just staring. Her head tilted slightly, her breathing slow and steady. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mind was screaming at me to do something, but my body refused to cooperate. Then she smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that sent ice down my spine. I don't remember how I moved, only that I somehow bolted out of bed and sprinted out of the apartment without looking back. I ran barefoot down the hall, not stopping until I was outside. Then I called the police. When they arrived, Megan was gone, vanished. She left behind everything, her clothes, her bag, even Rachel's ID. It was like she had never been there. The real horror came later. When the police followed up, they found Rachel's body in a wooded area outside the city. She had been dead for weeks. The person I had been living with wasn't Rachel, and she wasn't Megan either. I moved into the apartment on a Wednesday. It was a decent place, nothing fancy, but affordable and close to work. My new roommate, Eric, seemed normal enough. He was quiet, kept to himself, and had been living there for about a year before I moved in. He worked nights, which meant I usually had the place to myself in the evenings. That was a perk, or so I thought at first. The first couple of weeks were fine. We didn't talk much beyond the usual polite small talk. How's work? Did you see that new show? That kind of thing. Eric always paid his share of the rent on time, and he didn't leave dirty dishes in the sink. As far as roommates go, I could have done a lot worse. But something felt off. It was subtle at first, just this nagging feeling I was being watched. I'd be sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, and suddenly feel like eyes were on me. I'd look up, expecting to see Eric standing there, but the apartment would be empty. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling unsettled, like someone had just left the room. I chalked it up to adjusting to a new place. Then, one night, I was adjusting the TV stand, trying to push it back against the wall, when I noticed something odd. A tiny blinking red light in the corner. I leaned in closer. It was a camera, hidden, barely noticeable, but definitely there. My stomach dropped. I spent the next hour searching the apartment. The more I looked, the worse it got. There were cameras in the vents, in the smoke detectors, even one inside the bathroom mirror. Tiny, discreet, but very real. Someone had been watching me. I confronted Eric the next day when he got home from work. I didn't even try to hide my anger. What the hell is this? I demanded, holding up one of the cameras I had yanked out of a vent. Eric barely reacted. He glanced at it, shrugged, and said, "It's for security. You never know who you're living with." I laughed in disbelief. "Security? You've got cameras in the bathroom, man." He just stared at me. No guilt, no embarrassment. "You never know," he repeated. I told him I was moving out. I didn't even care about breaking the lease. He didn't argue, didn't try to stop me, just nodded like he had expected it. That night, I packed as much as I could. I planned to leave in the morning after getting a moving truck. But when I woke up, everything was wrong. My phone had been reset to factory settings. No contacts, no photos, nothing. My laptop wouldn't turn on. I grabbed my backpack, ready to bolt, when I saw the note on my pillow. "I see everything." That was it. No signature, no explanation. Just those 3 words. I was out of there in minutes, left half my stuff behind and didn't look back. I crashed at a friend's place that night and spent the next day trying to process what had happened. A few days later, I did some digging. Turns out, Eric had been arrested years ago for stalking and filming his past roommates. He was supposed to be in jail. There was nothing online about him being released. No records, no news articles. Just a gap in time, like he had vanished. It all started when I found a listing for a roommate on a housing forum. My old roommate had just moved in with her boyfriend, and I needed to fill the spot fast. Lisa was one of the first people to respond. She seemed nice enough when we met. Friendly, maybe a little too friendly, but I chalked it up to excitement. She was moving from out of state and didn't know many people here, so I figured she just wanted to make a good impression. First, she was the perfect roommate. Super clean, quiet, respectful. Almost too good to be true. She'd always ask questions about me, where I worked, my favorite foods, my family, my ex-boyfriends. It was a little much, but I assumed she was just trying to bond. I mean, isn't that what roommates do? I didn't think much of it. Then little things started happening. One morning, I woke up to find my laundry already done. I hadn't touched it. I asked Lisa if she did it, and she smiled, saying, "Oh, I was doing mine anyway, so I figured I'd do yours too." Nice, right? But also weird. I barely knew her, and it kept happening. My favorite snacks would get restocked before I had a chance to buy more. My coffee order would be waiting for me on the counter before I even mentioned I was craving one. It was small, almost thoughtful, but something about it felt off. Then the really weird stuff started. One day, I came home early from work and walked into the apartment to find Lisa standing in front of my full-length mirror, in my clothes. She gasped when she saw me and immediately started apologizing. I was just trying them on for fun. I hope you don't mind. We're about the same size, and you have such cute style. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to be mad, but she looked so embarrassed that I just awkwardly laughed it off. But after that, I started locking my door when I wasn't home. Then my ex, Jake, texted me, "Hey, why did you add me on Instagram again?" I hadn't. I checked, and sure enough, there was a new account with my name, my picture, but it wasn't me. The bio was different, the posts were weirdly personal, things I never shared publicly. I reported it and moved on, assuming it was just some random bot. But then it kept happening. More accounts, Twitter, Facebook, even LinkedIn, all using my name, my face, pretending to be me, posting things that sounded like me, but weren't. I started getting messages from friends. "Hey, why'd you DM me that? Are you okay? Your posts are kinda weird." And then one night I came home late and Lisa wasn't there. Her door was slightly open. I don't know why I did it. I knew it was wrong, but something in me just needed to look. Her room was unsettling. It looked normal at first, but then I noticed the little things. A wig on her desk, long and brown, just like my hair. A duplicate of my work uniform hanging in her closet. On her nightstand, a notebook filled with what looked like printed out text conversations, my text conversations. Some were from months ago, things I'd completely forgotten about. I backed out of the room, my heart pounding, and locked myself in mine. I called the cops immediately. By the time they arrived, Lisa was gone. She had packed up and disappeared. The police said there wasn't much they could do since nothing was technically illegal. Creepy? Yes. Criminal? Not really. But then, a few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone in my room. Now I have to find someone else." I blocked the number, changed my locks, and moved out a month later. I never heard from Lisa again. But sometimes, late at night, I still check my social media, just to make sure I'm the only one posting as me. I moved into my apartment about 6 months ago. It was a steal, a one-bedroom split into two, in an old building downtown, dirt cheap for the area. My roommate, Josh, was already living there. I didn't meet him before I signed the lease, but the landlord assured me he was a quiet guy who kept to himself. Fine by me. I wasn't looking for a new best friend, just a place to sleep. Josh was odd, but not in a way that seemed like a red flag at first. He barely spoke. We exchanged a few awkward greetings in the first week, but that was about it. He spent almost all his time in his room. I'd hear him moving around in there, sometimes at weird hours of the night, but he never left when I was home. I figured maybe he worked nights or was just antisocial. Whatever. I liked having the place to myself most of the time. After a while, though, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. For one, I never saw him eat. I'd cook in the kitchen, leave for a few hours, and when I came back, everything was exactly how I left it. No dirty dishes, no food wrappers. His door was always shut, but I never heard a TV, never smelled food. Nothing. It was like he wasn't even there, except I'd hear him moving late at night. Then there was the rent situation. The landlord wanted the payments separately. I'd Venmo my half to him, and he said Josh handled his directly. No big deal, but it was strange that I never once saw Josh mention it. I never saw him leave to work, never saw him have friends over, never even saw him do laundry. It was like he existed only inside that room. One night, I got home late from work. The apartment was dark, and something felt off. I couldn't place it at first, but then I noticed it. Josh's door was open. Just a crack, but still. That door had never been open before. Ever. Curiosity got the better of me. I knocked lightly. No answer. I pushed the door open a little more and flipped on the light. The room was empty. And I don't mean empty like he'd moved out. I mean empty like he had never lived there in the first place. No bed. No dresser. No clothes. Just an old, stained carpet and a couple of dusty food wrappers in the corner. I stood there, heart pounding. I'd been living with this guy for months. I'd heard him. I knew I had. So where the hell was he? I backed out of the room, shut the door, and tried to convince myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe he moved out while I was at work and took everything with him. Maybe he was squatting and bailed. But even then, why hadn't I ever seen his stuff? Where did he sleep? The next day, I called the landlord. I tried to keep my voice casual. Hey, just wondering, did Josh move out or something? His room is, empty. There was a pause. Then the landlord said, Josh. Yeah, my roommate. Another pause. You don't have a roommate. I felt my stomach drop. What? That room's been empty since the last guy left. Months ago. Thought you knew that. I hung up without saying another word. I moved out that night. I didn't even care about getting my deposit back. I just grabbed my stuff and left. I didn't want to spend another second in that apartment. A few weeks later, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to know more. So I did some digging, found the old rental listing, found the name of the last tenant before me. He had vanished. No one knew what happened to him. He left one night and never came back. No forwarding address, no trace. The police had been involved at some point, but they never found anything. The guy's name was still on the lease. And the worst part? Someone was still paying the rent for that room. To this day, the landlord keeps getting the money on time every month. But no one knows who's sending it.